Hello everyone, let's discuss today's The Hindu editorial page. The first article is Enhancing Representation for a Just Electoral System. In this article, the writer says that India's political system is characterized by limited representation, with an average of 2.5 million citizens represented by MPs. This is significantly lower than the US House of Representatives, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. India has around 4,126 members of the Legislative Assembly, 543 Lok Sabha MPs, and 245 Rajya Sabha MPs, which is considered inadequate for citizen welfare. The country also has a heterogeneous political system across states, which can lead to malapportionment, empowering select political parties over others. Delimitation has been used in the past to restore proportionality. But it has had negative consequences. Between 1971 and 2011, Rajasthan and Kerala saw population growth, while Uttar Pradesh and Lakshadweep experienced population growth. Assuming the number of parliamentary seats goes up to 753, states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, and Kerala might see an increase in seats of about 6%, while northern states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Rajasthan would see their seats rise by 63%. Delimitation, in its historical form, would engender a bias towards a Hindi-speaking northern population while enabling select national parties to rise to power. To minimize the deleterious consequences of delimitation, the number of seats in parliament needs to increase significantly, at least around 848 seats to avoid any state losing seats, helping to enhance democratic representation ratios. Delimitation should not be driven solely by population, but should also consider factors such as geographic determinism, economic productivity, linguistic history, and fairness. In simpler terms, Sikkim's voice must be heard in parliament, even if Bihar has a greater population. The fiscal impact of delimitation on future transfers to states will also need to be rethought. In conclusion, India's political system is characterized by limited representation, malapportionment, and a diverse political culture. Addressing these issues and ensuring a more representative and equitable political landscape are crucial for promoting democracy and ensuring equal representation for all citizens. The Indian electoral system needs reform to promote federalism and give states a better voice and platform to represent their interests. The Rajya Sabha can play this role, but it is currently elected by state legislatures, giving disproportionately more representation to larger, more populous states. Constitutional reform can be pursued to give each state the same number of Rajya Sabha MPs, while direct elections for Rajya Sabha MPs should be promoted while ensuring a domicile requirement is added and stringently adhered to. Proportional representation can also be considered, especially for the Lok Sabha and state assembly elections. In Australia, lower house elections have voters rank candidates on an alternative preference ballot, with votes redistributed until there is a clear majority behind a candidate. In France, a double ballot system is conducted for National Assembly elections, with candidates with over 1/8 of total votes in the prior round competing. India's first-past-the-post system may ensure quicker election results, but it does ensure that a legislator often represents a constituency without a majority of votes. There is potential for India to have more states, moving up from 29 to 50 or even 75 states. A new state reorganization commission may be set up after the next election to evaluate the socio-economic and administrative viability of select to be states. States must be split up / redesigned to enhance administrative efficiency and democratic accountability. India has 8,000 plus urban settlements, but the number of mayors remains in the low hundreds. Direct elections could enhance democratic representation and improve efficiency in urban governance. Select states such as Bihar and Rajasthan must be pushed to loosen their grip on city-level authorities' functions. Enhancing local democratic representation will help strengthen India's democracy and alleviate the concerns of citizens in the country. The next article is Remission of Diabetes, Desirable but not Essential. In this article, the writer says that the concept of a reversal of diabetes has gained popularity recently, with commercial organizations making claims about it. However, the term remission of diabetes is scientifically incorrect, as it implies that the condition has only temporarily gone away from the body. Type 2 diabetes is the most common form of diabetes, and long-term remission is unlikely to occur in this form. Some diabetes reversal programs claim that they can reverse type 2 diabetes at any stage of the disorder. However, this is not true. Some individuals with type 2 diabetes are more likely to achieve remission, as identified by the letters A, B, C, D, and E. Even if one achieves remission for a few months or years, it is still worth it because it leads to a good legacy effect, which provides protection from complications caused by diabetes. Those who cannot achieve remission should not be disheartened. In fact, most people with type 2 diabetes would find it difficult to achieve long-term remission. Even among those who do, diabetes often returns after a few months, and the severity of the disease is often worse than before. To lead a long and healthy life despite diabetes, follow another set of ABCD-linked mantras. A 1C or glycated hemoglobin should be below 7%. B. Blood pressure should be less than 130/80 mmHg HHGL or as appropriate for the age. C. LDL cholesterol should be less than 50 mg/dl or at least 70 mg/dl. And D. Discipline, including healthy diet, exercise, and frequent checkups with a diabetologist. We were among the first to show that if ABCD is maintained, people with diabetes can live long and healthy lives. In fact, 50 or 60 years of survival with diabetes and no complications is possible. In conclusion, the concept of a reversal of diabetes is not scientifically incorrect, but it is important to consider the pros and cons of achieving a long and healthy life despite diabetes. The next article is Growth Dichotomy Slowdown in Industrial Output Growth Shows Low Consumer Confidence. In this article, the writer says that in September, the Index of Industrial Production, IIP, rose 5.8%, almost half of the 14-month high 10.3% growth in August. Most economists anticipated a 7% to 8% increase in the month that marks the onset of India's packed fiscal calendar. Factory output growth was the slowest in 3 months and marked a 2.4% drop in production levels compared to August. Manufacturing led the decline, with year-on-year growth dropping from 9.3% in August to 4.5% in September, and production volumes declining 2% monthly on month. 12 sectors recorded a sequential decline in output this September, blaming hopes that firms would ramp up inventories in anticipation of festive spending. Producers' lack of confidence in consumers' impulses is reflected in consumer durables and non-durables, which were up just 1% and 2.7% respectively, on top of a 5.5% plus contraction last September. Consumer non-durables were down 3.5% with the lowest output levels seen since November 2022. September's IIP takes average factory output growth to 7.4% in the second quarter, lifting the uptick in the first half of 2023 to 24 to 6%. This may still weigh well, with the central bank chief's hopes of Q2 GDP growth outpacing their official projection of 6.5%. However, the IIP indicates an asymmetry in the economy, and a fresh fork lies in the road ahead. The next article is from the Hindu Business Line. The article is How to be the Vishwa Guru of Economics. In this article, the writer says that the world is grappling with a virtually unsolvable problem, which has its roots in good theories and recommendations. Governments have been trying to fix their economies for years, but not one has been able to prevent high unemployment and high inflation. The only policy they have adopted is flooding the economy with money, which has not worked. The answer may lie in macroeconomic theory, which draws support from John Maynard Keynes' classic work published in 1936. Keynes believed that governments should revive failing economies by spending more than they earn through tax revenue. This led to modern DeFi CIT budgeting, which turned both countries and citizens into debtors. Keynes was referring to a specific problem: unutilized industrial capacity. It took a long time for economists to build the Keynesian solution into a major body of acceptable economic theory. By the end of the 1950s, a new economic Bible had been written, which stated that it was okay for governments to run DeFi CIT budgets. However, it wasn't until 1968 that US President Lyndon Baines Johnson adopted this spend more by borrowing more as a major policy. He called it the Great Society Initiative, but all he wanted was to win the November 1968 election. Governments since the 1970s have been doing exactly this, as they want to get re-elected and use economics to their advantage. The main casualty has been productivity, and people have asked why they work hard if they don't have to. This perversion of Keynes was the exact opposite of East Asian policies, where the focus had been on productivity before the late 1980s and financial crises of the late 1990s. By the mid-2000s, politicians in these countries had also bought into this seductive idea, leading to a decline in productivity for the last 2 decades. This decline was made up of the belief that governments should spend more on defense spending than they earn, which has led to a decline in productivity. The next article is from Business Standard newspaper. The article is Towards a More Equal India. In this article, the writer says that the Bihar Caste Survey provides data on the links between caste and economic status, focusing on 3 measures: the incidence of income-linked poverty in a caste group, the proportion of the group holding government jobs, and the average level of education within the caste group. These measures are relevant for a broader concern about trends in inequality in the economy, which are reflected in differences in income levels and the incidence of poverty among caste groups. Access to government jobs matters because these jobs are still the main source of income increase and social mobility for the underprivileged, such as the children of an agricultural laborer. Access to education matters as it is the principal basis for occupational mobility from a traditional family job. The subcaste-wise data on poverty indicates that 42.93% of the families belong to scheduled castes, SC, 42.27% to scheduled tribes, ST, 33.58% to extremely backward castes, EBC, 33.16% to other backward classes, OBC, and 25.09% to the general category, GC, of upper castes. When it comes to government jobs, the general category castes, such as Bhumihars, Brahmins, and Kayastha, had the highest share, with 3.19% of their population in government jobs. The corresponding figures for the EBC, South Carolina, and ST are 0.98%, 1.13%, and 1.37%, respectively. A measure of the differences in access to education is provided by the substantial difference in the percentage of people who are graduates in different caste groups: 14.54% in the general category, 9.14% in the OBC category, 4.44% in the EBC category, 3.12% among scheduled castes, and 3.53% among scheduled tribes. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, made an assessment of the number of generations required to move from the bottom 10% of the income distribution to the mean income level. According to this assessment, the transition time from the lowest to the mean level of income in India is 7 generations, a level comparable to that in China, and above that in Europe and the US. The persistence of caste inequity may well be the reason for this. Social and economic mobility is vital for addressing the challenge of economic inequality. In India, according to the World Inequality Database, this has widened sharply between 1990 and 2018, the latest year for which they present an estimate. Over this period, the share of the top 10% in pre-tax income has gone up from 34.4% to 57.1%, while the share of the bottom 50% has fallen from 20.3% to 13.1%. The top 1% account for nearly half of the increase in the share of the top 10%. A recent report from Azim Premji University and several research papers provide useful data on the present trend of social and economic mobility and what needs to be done to accelerate it. From the point of view of intergenerational mobility, we need to look at the extent to which children of low-level workers have progressed. The key lies in the elimination of occupational specialization through the democratization of education and skill acquisition. Given the persistence of the caste hierarchy in the minds of upper caste individuals who still dominate in senior bureaucratic and management jobs, a measure of caste-linked reservations may still be required for a defined length of time. However, the primary approach must be a substantial improvement in the access of the socially and economically underprivileged to higher quality education and skill development.